September 1942. The German Sixth Army, Hitler's elite spearhead, believed the prize was theirs. Stalingrad lay broken, pulverized into dust and steel by relentless bombardment. Yet amidst the ruins, the unthinkable happened. The massive, mechanized tide of the Wehrmacht did not just slow down, it froze. Why? Because the very act of raising one's head, of giving a single order, of attempting a tactical maneuver, was now punishable by instant, invisible death. An entire army brought to a grinding halt, not by tanks or artillery barrages, but by one man operating a single rifle. This is the story of Vasily Zaitsev, the farm boy from the Urals, who would become the ghost of Stalingrad. He didn't just kill soldiers, he systematically decapitated the enemy's operational structure, turning confidence into paranoia and swift advance into catastrophic indecision. In the hellish landscape of the Eastern Front, Zaitsev proved that precision could outweigh brute force, rendering the German technical superiority absolutely meaningless under the iron rule of fear. To understand the shock, we must first understand the stakes. By late summer 1942, the war for the Soviet Union was a desperate fight for survival. Hitler saw Stalingrad not just as a city bearing Stalin's name, but as the key industrial hub and, critically, the gateway to the Caucasian oil fields. If Stalingrad fell, the Soviet war machine would seize up and die. Failure was not an option for either side, escalating the battle to monstrous dimensions. The primary German assault force was the Sixth Army, commanded by General Friedrich Paulus. This army was considered the best the Wehrmacht had to offer, disciplined, excellently equipped, and flush with victories from Western Europe and the initial blitzkrieg across Russia. They had faced resistance, yes, but never true stagnation. They were superior in armor, air power, and communications. Their confidence was absolute, bordering on arrogance. When the Germans entered the city limits, the rules of engagement dissolved. Blitzkrieg, designed for rapid movement across open terrain, became useless in the rebel. Every shattered building was a fortress, every sewer line a potential flanking route. This was the Rattenkrieg, the War of the Rats, characterized by brutal, intimate combat, where the distance between enemies was often measured in feet, not yards. This environment, unforgiving and chaotic, was precisely what transformed the tactical landscape. The Germans quickly realized their conventional firepower was overkill. A massive tank round might flatten a building, but it also created more rubble for the Soviets to hide in. Progress became a painful inch-by-inch slog, and every pause in movement was a vulnerability. The Soviets, cornered and fighting for their homes, excelled at this brutal, close-quarters improvisation. But it needed something more than improvisation. It needed precision death. Zaitsev arrived in Stalingrad, attached to the 284th Rifle Division. Initially, he was just a clerk, one of thousands. Zaitsev arrived in Stalingrad, attached to the 284th Rifle Division. Initially, he was just a clerk, one of thousands of Soviet citizens thrown into the maelstrom. But Zaitsev had a secret weapon, honed not in a military academy, but hunting deer in the Siberian taiga. Unparalleled marksmanship, and an almost supernatural ability to read the terrain. This simple skill, dismissed by high command in the early war, was about to become the single most effective weapon in the city. His transformation into a legend began, fittingly, with 3 German officers peering through binoculars. Standing far across a shell-cratered plaza, they were observing Soviet positions, confident in the distance. Zaitsev, observing them, aimed his non-scoped standard-issue Mosin Nagant, firing 3 quick rounds. 3 targets, 3 instant fatalities. This demonstration, the raw, audacious skill, captured the attention of his commissar, who promptly procured Zaitsev his legendary scoped rifle and formalized the role of the sniper. Zaitsev understood immediately that Stalingrad was the perfect predator's lair. The chaos masked his movement, the noise swallowed his shots, The rubble provided unlimited natural hides. He developed the sixes technique, placing 6 snipers across a sector, covering overlapping fields of fire, making it virtually impossible for the Germans to pinpoint the source of the danger. This wasn't just killing, it was a sophisticated, distributed network of psychological terror. The focus of Zaitsev's operational strategy was entirely non-traditional. He wasn't aiming for the mass of infantry. He targeted the nodes of the Wehrmacht machine: staff officers, communications personnel, forward observers, mortar crew commanders, and, most importantly, other snipers. By removing the eyes and the brains of the German formations, Zaitsev didn't just cause casualties, he caused strategic blindness. For the German commanders, the numbers were terrifying. Within weeks, Zaitsev and his rapidly trained apprentices tallied hundreds of kills. But the true damage was qualitative. A German battalion commander, suddenly deprived of his 2 best platoon leaders and his forward artillery spotter within 30 minutes, could no longer function. Attacks stalled, orders went undelivered. Units refused to move from cover, gripped by the palpable fear of the unseen shooter.
General Paulus, already under immense pressure from Hitler to capture the city, watched in disbelief as the combat tempo dropped dramatically. His highly effective tactical maneuver teams were paralyzed. The front lines were holding, yes, but the key to urban victory, rapid, coordinated movement, had evaporated. The enemy wasn't in front of them. The enemy was everywhere, hidden in the very foundations of the city.
The psychological effect was devastating. German soldiers, trained to rely on institutional structure and swift communication, began to distrust every shadow and every hole in the wall. Simple acts, checking time on a watch, lighting a cigarette, retrieving a supply drop, became mortal risks. This pervasive fear eroded unit cohesion faster than any artillery barrage. They were fighting a ghost whose range and timing seemed infallible. Zaitsev, meanwhile, mastered the art of camouflage and misdirection. He used dummy positions, helmets perched on sticks, often triggered by a tripwire, to draw initial counterfire, revealing the enemy's location without exposing himself. His understanding of light, shadow, and the echo chambers of the ruined buildings allowed him to fire from a position, disappear into the chaos, and reappear hundreds of yards away, sometimes minutes later, striking again. This made him seem ubiquitous. The Wehrmacht command quickly recognized that Zaitsev was not merely a threat, he was a catastrophe for morale and logistics. They realized that removing him was a strategic priority, equivalent to neutralizing a major artillery battery. The solution demanded a hunter equal to the prey. They needed their own master sniper, an expert specifically trained to eliminate highly skilled enemy marksmen. This was the moment the duel became personal and legendary. The man sent to break the Soviet sniper network was supposedly Major Erwin Koenig. Though historical consensus remains divided on his exact identity and rank, the legend itself is undeniable. He was described as the head of the German sniping school in Berlin, a man of exceptional skill, cold intellect, and zero tolerance for failure. Koenig's mission was simple: restore order by killing the ghost. Koenig arrived, and the dynamics of the battlefield shifted immediately. Suddenly, Soviet snipers began disappearing. The audacious Soviet tactic of using simple decoy positions was countered by sophisticated German detection methods. The playful psychological warfare turned instantly deadly. This was no longer a game of cat and mouse. This was a duel between 2 masters, each knowing the other's every trick and counter-trick. Zaitsev knew he was being hunted. He felt the weight of the new opposition, the deliberate patience that only true mastery could command. Koenig was hunting not just for a shot, but for Zaitsev's patterns. He was analyzing the wind, the sun's angle, the schedule of supply runs, any slight variation that would betray the master sniper's routine. Zaitsev had to abandon every reliable hide, every safe approach. The duel dragged on for 4 agonizing days in the ruins of the Red October factory. The two men moved in a calculated dance of death, often separated by mere hundreds of yards, yet unable to get a clear, safe shot. The entire sector surrounding their operational area became a de facto no man's land. Infantry movements ceased entirely. The war around them effectively stopped, waiting for the climax. Zaitsev was operating with a veteran Soviet companion, Nikolai Kulikov. The two devised a masterful plan, leveraging the extreme patience and arrogance they suspected in the German major. They sought an advantage not on superior weaponry, the German scope was likely better, but on psychological deception. They knew Koenig would eventually push his luck, driven by his mission and perhaps his ego. The moment of truth arrived near a heavily bombed fuel depot. Zaitsev and Kulikov set up a sophisticated ambush. Kulikov exposed himself slightly by slowly lifting a helmet attached to a plank, designed to mimic a careless, fleeting movement. This was the bait, and the weight was unbearable. Every second stretched into an eternity, the silence punctuated only by their ragged breathing. The German master, fueled by the expectation of an easy kill and perhaps growing frustrated by the standoff, took the bait. A single, distinct shot ripped through the air, punching a clean hole through the helmet. Koenig had revealed his location, if only for a fraction of a second, but that fraction was all Zaitsev needed. He observed the disturbed earth and the slight movement near a large sheet of corrugated iron, the location of the German master.
Zaitsev waited. He knew Koenig would remain absolutely still, confident that his position was secure, having just taken out what he perceived to be the threat. Zaitsev and Kulikov shifted positions slightly, ensuring they had the perfect angle beneath the metal sheet. The tension was suffocating. This was the culmination of weeks of fear, death, and calculated risk.
Finally, the German, perhaps intending to move or observe the result of his previous shot, adjusted his position slightly. It was a minuscule motion, a subtle rise of the head or shift of the scope, but it was enough. Zaitsev's rifle fired once. The sound was deafeningly final in the ruins.
Koenig collapsed, shot directly through the eye, a testament to the pinpoint accuracy of the man who had just outwitted him. Kulikov rushed forward, confirming the kill and retrieving the German's documents and rifle, trophies that confirmed the legend was true. The duel was over. The Wehrmacht's greatest hunter had been vanquished by the man he was sent to destroy.
The impact of this single victory rippled immediately through the German lines. The news that the German sniping master had been eliminated by the Soviets' ghost further cemented the sense of futility and dread. If even their best could not guarantee safety or success, how could the ordinary soldier hope to survive? The psychological paralysis deepened dramatically. Zaitsev's total reported count during the Battle of Stalingrad surpassed 225 confirmed German kills, including 11 enemy snipers. These were not just numbers, they were commanders, spotters, and the very eyes and ears of the Sixth Army. This systemic destruction of the Wehrmacht's tactical brain meant that the army was literally fighting blind and deaf, unable to coordinate offensives or even safe retreats. The sheer success of Zaitsev led the Soviet command to fully embrace the doctrine of sniperism. They rapidly established formal sniper schools throughout Stalingrad, training thousands of marksmen, many of whom were women. The sniper became the symbolic embodiment of Soviet resistance, resilient, precise, and utterly lethal in the chaos. The German response was ineffective. Attempts to bombard known sniper haunts failed because the snipers were constantly moving. Attempts to sweep areas led to massive casualties as infantry groups were targeted one by one. The Wehrmacht, designed for decisive movement, was forced into a static, defensive posture within the ruins they had conquered, utterly vulnerable to the precise, patient attrition warfare of the Soviet snipers.
This sustained operational failure contributed to a critical strategic outcome: the inability of the Sixth Army to clear the city quickly enough to protect its flanks. While Zaitsev paralyzed the tactical movement within Stalingrad, the Soviet counteroffensive, Operation Uranus, was building momentum outside. The time lost, the resources diverted to hunting a ghost, directly contributed to the Wehrmacht's eventual encirclement. Paulus and the Sixth Army were trapped. The psychological and physical wounds inflicted by the snipers meant that when the external hammer fell, the internal structure of the army was already fragile and brittle. They had been fighting not just soldiers, but the specter of death itself, and it had consumed their will to fight long before the final assault. Zaitsev was eventually severely wounded by a German mortar attack, suffering grave eye injuries that necessitated him being evacuated from Stalingrad. His war was not over, but his time as the ghost of the city ended tragically. Yet the legacy he left behind persisted, carried forward by the hundreds of marksmen he had personally mentored, ensuring the German command structure remained under relentless, lethal pressure. By February 1943, the Sixth Army, starved, frozen, and completely demoralized, surrendered. The loss of Stalingrad was the first truly decisive defeat for the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front, shattering the myth of German invincibility and marking the true turning point of World War II. It was a failure of logistics, leadership, and, critically, morale, a factor disproportionately influenced by a single, resourceful man. The story of Zaitsev and the legendary duel with König serves as a profound case study in asymmetric warfare. It demonstrated that in a complex environment like urban combat, highly skilled individual initiative can neutralize the advantages of superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Precision and patience, when wielded expertly, become force multipliers that destroy the enemy's confidence from the inside out. Had the German advance not been paralyzed, had the key command personnel not been eliminated so quickly, the Sixth Army might have achieved its objective before Operation Uranus began. The delay, estimated in crucial weeks, purchased by the sacrifice and ingenuity of men like Zaitsev, was the margin the Soviet Union desperately needed to survive and counterattack. Zaitsev returned to active duty after recovering some sight, though never fully. He finished the war participating in battles across Eastern Europe, earning the title Hero of the Soviet Union. His life after the war was far removed from the battlefield, managing textile factories, but his legend endured, studied in military academies worldwide. The greatest lesson of Stalingrad, encapsulated by the sniper tool, is that true military power is not just about the size of the army or the caliber of the weapon, but the ability to adapt and to crush the spirit of the opponent. The Germans were too reliant on overwhelming force. The Soviets used the ruins as a laboratory for individualized death, turning the battlefield into a personalized nightmare.